Hello, I'm CJ Werleman, and in this episode, we reveal how Israel harms the interests of the United States and every American citizen. But first, please remember to like and subscribe to our show. Now let's get into it. If you want to defeat Israel and end its criminal occupation of Palestine, then it's critical you understand that only one demographic matters: the American voter. I mean, it really doesn't matter what Europeans, Canadians, or even Australians think about Israel, because their tax dollars don't keep the Zionist occupation afloat. At the end of the day, the only currency that matters are American taxpayer dollars, because without this constant stream of money, Israel is dead. It's finished. I mean, don't take my word for it. Here's an Israeli professor of international relations being asked whether Israel could get by without US economic and diplomatic support. He answered flatly no, saying, and I quote, "Israel cannot work alone and needs financial aid as well as backing in the international arena from some major power," end quote. He then lists reasons why China, Russia, Europe and Australia are not suitable options, leaving Israel solely dependent on US economic, diplomatic and military assistance. And he also says that were the US to take this money away, then Israel would disappear. So all we need to do is convince even a slim majority of Americans that supporting Israel financially is detrimental or harmful to themselves, their household, family, community and country. Because once a majority of Americans understand that Israel is indeed harmful to their interests, then it's game over. Because in a democracy, voters choose political candidates and parties that best serve, not deny, their own needs and wants. The good news is, American attitudes towards Palestine are changing, as reflected in these recent surveys, particularly among Democrat voters. With this chart showing that sympathies for Israel among liberal Americans falling from 35% to 11% during the past decade, and with support for Israel among conservatives falling from 82% to 67% just in the past few years alone.
U.S. public support for Israel amid Tel Aviv's relentless war on Palestine's Gaza is crumbling. A series of polls conducted by Reuters Ipsos in mid-October and again in mid-November showed that the share of Americans who believe the U.S. should support Israel had dropped from 41% to 32%.
If this trend continues, then the Democratic Party platform will be staunchly pro-Palestine and anti-Israel, and within the next presidential election cycle or two. That's just how close we are to achieving this goal. And every political scientist knows that younger generations now get it. They understand their parents and grandparents have been deceived by decades of uninterrupted Zionist propaganda. And even more importantly, they understand that funding Israel with their tax dollars is not only an act of unmitigated evil, but also it's detrimental to their future and that of the country. The era of Zionist hawks in the Democratic Party is coming to an end, with Biden and Nancy Pelosi gone and the likes of Chuck Schumer old and on the way out. That Democrats elected the country's first Palestinian American to Congress is indicative of changing attitudes among the party's voting base.
I am the only Palestinian American member of Congress now, and my mere existence has disrupted the status quo. I am so personal for me. I am a reminder to colleagues that Palestinians do indeed exist, that we are human, that we are allowed to dream. We are mothers, daughters, granddaughters. We are justice seekers and are unapologetically about our fight against oppressions of all forms. And colleagues, Palestinians aren't going anywhere no matter how much money you send to Israel's apartheid government.
So the question now is, how do we help the rest of the United States turn against the criminal Israeli occupation? Well, the answer is obvious. We do so by showing just how much US government support for the Zionist state hurts ordinary Americans. So let's start with the money. But I don't want to spend too much time here, as most Americans are at least vaguely familiar with the level of financial aid the US gives Israel. But let's quickly break down the numbers. The United States gives Israel roughly $4 billion each year, making the Zionist state the largest recipient of US aid. And in Israel, we are talking about a highly developed country that can afford universal health care, which is a fundamental and basic human right that Americans are denied. mostly because the money that could be used to fund Medicare for all in the United States is money that's sent to Israel. This should literally and metaphorically sicken every American citizen, notwithstanding the fact that $4 billion per year is also $1 billion more than the US spends fighting against the climate crisis, the effects of which are now costing the economy more than $150 billion per year. But $4 billion per year doesn't include all the military aid Israel receives from the US, as you can see from this chart. It also dishes out billions of dollars more in direct military assistance whenever Israel invades and bombs Gaza or Lebanon, with President Biden handing over another $14.3 billion to the Jewish state for its genocide in Gaza last year. Put another way, every Israeli family of 4 has received the equivalent of $116,000 from American taxpayers during the past 40 years. In many parts of America, this is enough to buy a house. But if we stick with the $4 billion annual payment alone and exclude direct military aid and interest payment this money attracts, then every US citizen hands over $26 per year out of their own pocket to the State of Israel. It might not sound like a lot, but this money would pay for 47,000 additional and desperately needed elementary school teachers. But instead, this money is sent to Israel, where it's used to slaughter innocent Palestinian children, remembering that more than 20,000 students and soon-to-be students have been killed in Gaza since last October.
Because, my friends, day after day, year after year, decade after decade, non-violent Palestinian activists struggle against the daily violence and harassment of occupation. Violence and harassment subsidized, by the way, with billions of US taxpayer dollars.
Beyond the financial costs is the reputational harm that US government support for a serial war criminal and human rights violator inflicts upon the United States and therefore the American people. Put simply, our support for a vicious military occupation in the Middle East stirs hatred against the United States. It is illustrated in bin Laden's famous letter to America, in which he cited US support for the Zionist occupation to be one of his top motives for carrying out the September 11 attacks. 3 years later, bin Laden said in his confession video that another of his motives was revenge for the United States helping Israel invade and occupy Lebanon in 1982. Now, while most Americans know that more than 3,000 Americans' lives were lost on 9/11, many forget that Israel's occupation of Lebanon cost the lives of hundreds of US soldiers in Beirut in 1983. So, maybe it's time for a little reminder.
The official toll now tops 160 dead and more than 180 wounded, not counting one body that was pulled from the debris while News 4 was on the scene this afternoon. Rescue crews worked quickly today, clearing tons of rubble, but much remains to be done. Marine officials expect all but given up hope of finding anyone else alive.
The Israeli-US relationship has cost a significant number of American lives. There have been many instances in which hundreds of US service personnel, diplomats, and civilians have been killed in the Middle East. Put simply, US support for the criminal Zionist occupation paints a target on the back of every American citizen. In the same way other US meddling in invasions in the Middle East have spawned an array of anti-US militant groups.
America and Israel both know that you cannot bomb your way into safety. We learned that lesson in Iraq and Afghanistan. They learned it in southern Lebanon. They laid siege there, occupied the southern area for 20 years. All it did was birth and strengthen Hezbollah. And they're about to do it all over again, and we are letting them. Real friends take the keys, because friends don't let friends bomb that much.
And we shouldn't forget that Israel has a long history of killing US citizens too, having murdered 23-year-old American activist Rachel Corrie by crushing her with a military bulldozer. More recently, an Israeli sniper deliberately shot and killed Palestinian-American journalist Shireen Abu Akleh in 2022. And last week, Israeli soldiers murdered an American human rights activist at a checkpoint in the occupied West Bank. And then there was the infamous Israeli attack on the USS Liberty in 1967, which killed 22 US soldiers and sank the spy ship. A deliberate terrorist attack meant to stop the United States from spying on Israel's criminal invasion and bombardment of Egypt, Jordan, and Syria.
Early June 1967. The six-day war in the Middle East between Israel, Egypt, Jordan, and Syria is underway. A spy ship, very lightly armed, but bristling with antennae, steams into the Mediterranean to eavesdrop on the conflict. It is patrolling in international waters off the Egyptian coast. At 2 in the afternoon, on June the 8th, with the war reaching its climax, Israeli jets and motor torpedo boats launch an unprovoked attack on the ship. They drop napalm and strafe its decks with rockets, cannon fire, and armor-piercing rounds before trying to sink it with torpedoes.
I now want you to imagine a world in which the United States didn't finance the criminal Israeli occupation of Palestine. There wouldn't have been a deadly attack on US military barracks in Beirut in 1983, and nor would there have been an attack against the United States on September 11, 2001. And therefore, no invasion and occupation of Afghanistan and Iraq, which cost the lives of 7,000 US soldiers, 4.5 million innocent civilians, constituting a Holocaust level of death and destruction, while bankrupting the United States, having added more than $8 trillion to the national debt, an unpaid bill that robs future generations of their basic human needs. But more than this, the 2-decade war on terror ripped apart American society, making ordinary Americans distrustful of their government, while leaving a mental crisis in its wake, while also igniting a catastrophic drug, suicide, and gun violence pandemic. This dystopian nightmare was made possible by no other than the State of Israel. It spent tens of millions of dollars lobbying United States politicians to invade Iraq.
There is no question whatsoever that Saddam is seeking and is working and is advancing towards the development of nuclear weapons. No question whatsoever. If you take out Saddam's regime, I guarantee you that it will have enormous positive reverberations on the region.
Dear America, as you can see, Israel is a noose around your neck. Your hard-earned money is being funneled into the pockets of already wealthy and well-off Jewish settlers in the Middle East. And in return, you're not only depriving yourself of healthcare and modern infrastructure, but also you are being led into foreign wars that are killing your sons and daughters. It's time you join the growing number of your fellow countrymen who are saying enough is enough, including State Department officials who have resigned in recent months because of the country's support for Israel.
If you look at what is unfolding now, it is not only a disaster in Gaza, but it is a foreign policy disaster for the United States, across the Arab world, and frankly, across the global South. We seem like hypocrites when we criticize Israel, when we criticize Russia for human rights abuses, but fail to do so with Israel. And so I think that our embrace, we have to be careful with that embrace, because it draws us in as well.
It's also time to join the rest of the Western world in its calls to dismantle the Zionist occupation. Your lives will improve dramatically, as will those of millions of people in the Middle East. It's time to free Palestine. But that's my time for today. Please don't forget to subscribe to this channel, and we kindly ask that you please support our effort to expose and confront injustices in the Muslim world by becoming a member of this show at patreon.com/CJWhirleman. We can't produce, sustain, and grow the show without your help, and we offer exclusive benefits and content to those who do. But for now, good evening, good morning, wherever you are, and stay blessed.